Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure this session was being recorded. Today's webinar is sponsored by Boston University Alumni Association and the Society of Terrier Alumni Retirees Network. My name is Liliana Mickle, and I'm the member of the Alumni Generational Engagement Team in Boston University's Office of Alumni Relations. As part of the Development and Alumni Relations vision of lifelong engagement, we have launched the Society of Terrier Alumni Retirees, affectionately known as STAR. STAR aims to engage with retired alumni and others preparing for retirement. Through this network, we offer access to valuable tools, programs, and communities to help our alumni stay connected with the university and each other. In an email, I will follow up with steps on how you can join the STAR network through BU Connects. In the part 1 chat, someone asked why sharing your goals with BU could help you to realize them. Well, each member of today's panel is a BU alum, such as holding leadership roles in boards, mentoring current students, chairing their 50th reunion, or is a STAR Volunteer Advisory Council member. Russell, Gary, Linda, Barry, and Denise, thank you so much for all you have done for BU alums and our students. Before introducing today's facilitator, just a few housekeeping notes. Today's presentation is being recorded. I will email it along with Jill's presentation from last week to everyone who registered for the webinar. Through the presentation, you can submit your questions using the chat function. I'm pleased to introduce our facilitator and College of Arts and Sciences alumni, Jill Steinberg. Jill Steinberg, Ph.D., an emeritus professor at San Jose State University, a licensed clinical psychologist, Salzburg Fellow, author, and founder of MyRetirementWorks.com. She received her undergraduate degree from Boston University in 1972 and her doctorate in clinical psychology from Ohio State University in 1978. She taught classes and has presented her research on successful retirement to universities, including BU, Google, and other professional organizations. Her research was published in the Aging Consumer Perspective from Psychology to Economics. Jill is enjoying retirement as a lifelong learner. She keeps herself immersed in the retirement literature and has found time to partner with me to launch STAR and host webinars. I'm truly grateful for all of her support, contributions, and wonderful ideas. Let me hand the mic off to Jill, who will call on each panel member to introduce themselves. Take it away.
Okay, thanks, Liliana, and thanks for all of you being here. It's just really an honor to be with all BU alum. So the panel's going to go like this. I'm going to ask each person to introduce themselves. When they are all finished introducing themselves, I'm going to ask each panelist one follow-up question. And then when we're done with all that, I will ask questions that you've presented in the chat today or last week, so that we can address your concerns. And as Liliana said, please keep your questions coming, because I will write a follow-up email for anything we haven't addressed. So panelists, given that at best 75% of people enjoy their retirement, and we know that purpose is a big factor, and you're currently feeling successful, could you please introduce yourself by telling us where you're at in your retirement process, including where you're at in terms of finding purpose? Okay, Russell, how about if we start with you?
Okay, thank you, Jill. Good afternoon. I'm a 1980 graduate of the Question School of Business, formerly known as the School of Management. And yes, I'll be the first to admit I still have difficulty remembering the name of the new name of the school, but I'll chalk that up to my senior status. I retired in 2016 after a 30-year career in human resources management for the food service industry, working both the retail and manufacturing side of the business. Retirement for me has been a paradox. I've had to be abased. I've had to be abound. I've had to be content, and I've had to be hungry. All the while realizing that no two retirements are the same, and that finding fulfillment and purpose in retirement is an individual and personal journey. Being retired now for 7+ years, I'm still on the path of trying to find a healthy balance between being content and being hungry. To date, I would say I'm in a great place. Each day, I enthusiastically embrace the challenges and opportunities that are presented. And each day, I am thankful for the opportunities to be seen and not viewed.
Thanks, Russell. You gave us a lot for me to ask you follow up on. So Gary, could you introduce yourself?
Sure, Jill. I'm Gary Karelis, 1970 graduate of Questrom Business School at BU, now living in La Jolla, California. I joined my family plastics manufacturing company in Haverhill, Massachusetts, as the third generation making plastic heels for women's shoes, and eventually I bought the company. I stayed in the business for 20 years until I was forced to liquidate due to imports taking over. During this time, I had the foresight to invest in real estate, as I did not think there would be a long-term future where I was. Real estate became my second career. I grew up in New England, went to prep school in New Hampshire, graduated from BU, got married, and raised a family in Newburyport, Massachusetts. I first visited San Diego with my wife in 2010. Instantly, we were smitten, and we were determined to find a way to live here. Over time, we bought a condo, traveled back and forth to Newburyport, and ultimately made the decision to live here permanently. The draw was the weather, and we also found that the people here were all transplanted from somewhere else and were all looking for the same things as we were, such as being welcoming, inviting, and sharing common interests. We joined a gym, became a part of a large group of newcomers, got more active in sports than we previously were, and both got into acting, something I had not done since high school. Since I graduated BU 53 years ago, I have supported the university, attended alumni gatherings, joined in Questrom events, and made lots of contacts within the Alumni Development Office. A year ago, I had the opportunity to join the BU Alumni Council, and I'm thrilled to be even more involved with growing the Alumni Association and getting students and young alumni to partake in making BU even better than it is. Finding the right place to settle, keeping busy, having our kids nearby who followed us here, all of that has made retirement wonderful. I would not change anything.
Well, thank you, Gary. And Linda, how about you? Could you introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Linda Keene. I was born and raised in New York City, and in the fall of 1969, went to Boston University, where I received my degree in 1973 from the College of Business Administration. 4 years later, I got an MBA at Harvard and spent the next 30 years climbing the corporate ladder in a variety of marketing and business development roles at Fortune 500 companies. And during that time, I found myself pushing the glass ceiling with my head the entire time as one of the few African-American and female executives in those organizations. I ended my corporate career as a chief marketing officer for a large publishing company. And then in 2008, I took a detour in my career and started a second act as the chief executive for a large nonprofit organization. And in that role, I was able to leverage all of my business management, financial, marketing, and strategic planning skills to successfully lead that organization through some significant challenges like mergers, the 2008 recession, and a changing competitive landscape. I retired in 2015 and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina with my husband of 49 years, who I met as an undergraduate at Boston University. I'm enjoying my retirement, traveling, having an active social life, grandparenting 2 wonderful little boys, and I am actively working now on my third act as a fiber artist.
Well, Linda, okay, thank you. Barry, how about, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, Barry Levine. I was a student at BU in 1983, a member of the brand new computer science department. So I was among the first graduates in 1985. And My opportunity at BU included great internships in the Boston area, which led me to a career in financial technology, or as the young kids say today, fintech. And I basically, at some point, decided to relocate back to my home city of New York, both for career and family reasons. Most of my family was still in New York, and to be blunt, the economy was a lot better in New York City than Boston at the time, so there were a lot more opportunities there at that point in history. I additionally, once I was back in New York, I actually ended up marrying a high school friend of mine. We reconnected. She went to law school. We raised two boys together. While I commuted to Manhattan to work for companies like Citibank, BlackRock, and Alliance Bernstein Equitable Insurance, she was struggling to maintain her career and leverage her education at the same time. She often had to take leaves of absence and work part-time while raising our kids, later caring for a widowed elderly mother, and then an adult disabled child. So meanwhile, while I was sitting on the train 3 hours a day back and forth into Manhattan. So basically, after my 4 decades in the industry, I decided it was time, the family issues and economics drove me to finally decide to retire. Pre-COVID, my industry really was centered around cities like New York and Boston. The industry started relocating many jobs to other lower cost areas, and I was left with choices. I was left with the choice of either relocate my family, ending my wife's legal career that she worked so hard to establish while juggling children and other things, separating from family and friends, or I could start a new gig locally. Or what I chose was to stay home and focus on helping my family with their needs and their goals, rather than focusing on my own intellectual pursuits and interests. Not that there isn't time for both, but my focus has changed significantly from one to the other. Helping my wife be able to achieve more in her career by taking a lot of her responsibilities. Helping my adult disabled son get better treatment and daily support that he needs, better than when I was working in Manhattan all day. Helping my elderly mother-in-law get help with all the physical, economic, and legal needs that the elderly need, such as dealing with Medicaid, hiring aides, working with lawyers, doing her taxes, paying her bills, all those things. So I'm essentially running 3 households right now, my son, my mother-in-law, and myself, and have older parents myself, my own older parents that don't need my help yet, but I'm sure that's coming next. So I take, I was lucky to financially plan for the possibility of early retirement. I retired at 57, almost 2 years ago. And in the last 2 years, I think I've been able to make a huge impact on these family members and hopefully improve their lives and continue to do so. I've learned that, my sense of purpose really, I think it's always come from helping people, but I did it through the skills I learned at BU in computer science and math, and now I'm doing it using a variety in a variety of other areas, and really enjoying it. And I find it just as fulfilling to help people with their goals as I did to work on my own goals. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barry. We'll come back to that. We got lots of questions about people being in that situation. So Denise, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Shear, and I'm an engineering alumna from the class of 1981. My career with Ametek and General Electric gave me multiple opportunities to manage global businesses with custom engineered products. I'm now in my 8th year of retirement, and I have to say that I'm truly loving it. My days are filled with lots of activities to challenge me physically and mentally, and to provide me with meaningful social interactions with friends and family. I believe that I've found my purpose. The things that I do that have caused me to feel most fulfilled are the opportunities that I've had to leverage what I learned during my career and give back to society.
Thank you, Denise. Right to the point. We'll get back. I have things to ask you. So now I'm going to switch to some follow-up questions. 1 question for each person. And as you can see, audience, we're having to go through this quickly because there are 5 amazing alum in front of you. Well, 6. You can include me too. Anyway, let's start with Russell. So Russell, what has been your biggest takeaway from your retirement journey so far?
My biggest takeaway in retirement is that I've had to be had to be motivated. And I had to be motivated to do three things. I had one to be motivated to utilize those skills that I had honed during my working days, the skills of goal setting, the skills of planning, skills of organization, and the skills of problem solving, etc. It's essential that you actively use those skills in retirement to achieve your purpose and fulfillment. Those skills cannot remain dormant. They have to stay active. Secondly, you have to feel good about yourself. You have to be positive. You have to be enthusiastic. And there's a lot of barriers that can get in the way of that. But you have to be motivated to seek out those resources that will help you deal with those headwinds so that you can focus on, your retirement goals. And lastly, you have to be motivated about being a continuous learner. You have to be motivated to move outside of your comfort zone, to try new things, to be exposed to new things. So motivation was my biggest takeaway. And when we were working, work provided some of that motivation, but now that motivation depends 100% on yourself.
Wow, thank you, Russell. You illustrated all the points from the literature. Thank you. I wish we could go to more details. So Gary, and thanks for being so succinct. It's been 7 years since you moved 3,000 miles away from where you live, work, and grew up. Can you tell us how you feel now as you move forward?
Yes, Jill, I love my new life. I'm busier than ever, still overseeing my business back east, but mostly spending time doing the activities I enjoy, including sports, acting, getting together with new friends in San Diego, and increasing my involvement with BU. I've thrived on the West Coast. I've scaled down my business. I enjoy being outside daily and pinch myself each day that I am here, and I am black and blue, thrilled that I was able to make that transition. I feel that I'm on the right trajectory going forward, and I also am proactive, taking care of my health and whatever ails me.
Thank you. So Linda, can you tell us about your decision to pursue a career as an artist at this stage of your life?
Sure. When I retired, I was really just pretty burned out after 8 years in a very intense leadership role. And so I spent the first couple of years of my retirement just dealing with bucket list items. I focused first on health and adjusting to a new community. And then also all the things my husband and I wanted to do, traveling, spending more time with the grandchildren, visiting friends, seeing certain sites that we wanted to do, getting it more involved in some of our interests like genealogy, et cetera. And for about 2 years, we were just ticking off that list. And then I started to feel like there was something missing. And what I found was what was missing was some sort of larger goal-oriented activity that would keep me stimulated and fill the role that work had always filled in my life. And that's when I began to look around and try to decide what was it that I thought would do that. And I had a number of different interests, but something that was a thread through all of the activities I'd done outside of my work life was creativity. I used to sew, I did interior decorating, I loved to scrapbook, I love photography, interior design. There were always things that allowed me to express my creativity. And as a child, I was very interested in art, but I didn't really come from an environment where that was something that was a big part of my life. Visual arts, I wasn't really familiar with any artists other than some of the old dead artists that we would learn about in school or that were at museums and whose work I didn't particularly relate to. It wasn't something I ever thought about for myself. And my parents were very focused on all of their children having the opportunity to go to college and have good, solid careers, which is something that they did not have an opportunity to do. And so I just kind of used my artistic abilities in hobby settings. And it wasn't until I began to cast around and I realized that was something that was very meaningful to me. My husband and I have been art collectors for many years, collectors of African-American art. And I enjoyed every aspect of being involved in the arts, except I had never made any art of my own, and I didn't have any training. So I started doing an inventory of my own skills, and I said, well, I don't know how to draw, I don't know how to paint, and I don't want to go back to school to learn how to do something. So I tried to figure out how I could make art with skills I already had. And as I mentioned, I knew how to sew. So the idea of creating pictures out of fabric was something that came to me. I said, I'm going to try to figure out how to make art using fabric and my sewing skills. And that's how I really got into it, started sharing my work with friends, putting it on Facebook, doing things like that, got a lot of encouragement. And during the pandemic, I had an opportunity to really experiment and develop a style that I felt really expressed what I wanted to say and that was recognizable as my work. And so I launched a business doing that. And I'm exhibiting my work. I'm having opportunities to meet and engage with very different kinds of people as I pursued a career as an artist. And I'm finding that very satisfactory.
Wow, thanks, Linda. You really illustrate how much long-term interests and your career background could help you figure things out. So Barry.
Excuse me, Jill, please
Yeah.
forgive me. I just need to let people know on the chat to please direct your questions to everyone so everyone can see them. And panel members, if you're not speaking, can you mute yourself because sometimes there's interference with who's speaking. Thank you.
Okay, well, I will let you know in the audience, if anything's coming my way by chat, I'll have to find out afterwards. I have enough to focus on. So I appreciate right afterwards reading and getting excited about what you asked. And I can tell you the questions last week were so informed and complicated. Thank you. So we're going to address some of those in a few minutes. Barry, what have you learned so far that might influence later stages of retirement as you age?
Thank you, Jill. Yeah, I mean, I'm almost 2 years into retirement, and given what I explained that I've been doing, working with elderly and disabled family members, I'll add to the theme that a couple of other panelists mentioned about health, but maybe expound on it. I mean, when you're working with people as old, I have a 96-year-old mother-in-law who's severely disabled and an adult son. And when you see how health can affect people and how it can really restrict their ability to have purpose in their life, as we all hope to have in our retirements, it makes you really focus on your health and do whatever you can, short of genetics, that you can to make sure you're able to enjoy your retirement in your old age. So what does that mean? I became fanatically interested in my health to the point where it's both a hobby and I have been bicycle riding maybe 2,000 miles a year since lockdown with COVID, and I was sort of on my transition to retirement. I learned how to renovate and repair bicycles. I really made it a big hobby of this. Met lots of new friends, retiree friends who were into the same. So started to develop a new social network through a new hobby. My wife and I started doing a lot more cooking than ever before. When we were stuck home anyway with COVID, it was a good opportunity to force ourselves to, instead of using Uber Eats and ordering in meals every night, to learn how to cook and make sure we know what healthy ingredients in our food. So we kind of made that into a hobby, not just a health activity. And I learned how to become a better patient to my doctors. I actually made friends with most of my doctors, so I interacted with them more and follow their advice instead of being the bad patient who just nods and I'll see you again in a couple of years. Okay. So, when I worked with 3 hours a day of commuting and a long day in the city, I didn't have time to focus on any of this. So that really made a big impact on me, having the time to do it and seeing the impact of not having your health. So that was important for me. Another thing I learned was working with my elderly mother-in-law and seeing the challenges that the very elderly have, legal issues, financial issues. It really made me start thinking about, my future. And a lot of people sort of wait till things are too late to do something that could have been handled earlier and better. And I'm handling a lot of those issues for my mother-in-law now, and certainly starting to make my wife and I think about how to prepare for our future later phases of our retirement. Things like just helping her with Medicaid. I had a lawyer lecture me that, well, you're kind of starting late. You're throwing her a life raft, not a boat, but better late than never, and you can prepare for yourself better with that knowledge. I think that probably the final lesson that I've learned is the importance of planning evolving short-term goals. After a lifetime of planning for the long-term, planning career, what am I going to do in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, where do I want to be? I've just learned that, both because of your own age, your own health, your family, your situation, you need to take satisfaction in shorter term goals where you can enjoy, the next year of your life and just accept that whatever comes will come, and then you'll reinvent yourself every couple of years. And I feel that's one of the big differences now versus how I thought when I was a fresh graduate at a BU and thinking ahead to my whole life. I thought much longer term, and it's my nature to think that way. But I realized that part of finding purpose is to continue reinventing yourself, and the timelines are, I think, much shorter as you're retired and your circumstances change much more rapidly at this age.
Oh, thank you. I can't express my gratitude to each one of you. You're illustrating all the points and how to really apply them. So Denise, can you tell us more about some of those opportunities you referred to and how you came about finding them?
Sure. So when I decided to retire, I reflected upon what I enjoyed from my working days and what I had been told that I was pretty good at. And one of the first things that came to mind was mentoring of people, and particularly engineers. It turned out that mentoring opportunities have developed rather organically for me in retirement. Between the people that I worked with or was in organizations with, the children of neighbors, and BU students in engineering's mentoring program that they just launched in 2021, I've actually been approached a lot. And when I'm communicating with my mentees, I can tell from their reactions that they really appreciate the advice that I'm giving them. A lot of the time, they haven't yet experienced something that I have, and I can help them understand what to expect and how to handle it. It's kind of giving my work experience another purpose and me another purpose. And I've truly enjoyed the opportunities that I've had to help other people.
Well, thank you, Denise. Okay, so here we go. Panelists, I'm going to ask you the questions that have come up in the chat. They're complicated, they're useful. Here we go. Russell. So someone asked about sharing goals with someone with someone at BU. Why would you consider doing that? Can you tell them why you think it's important maybe to consider mentoring or sharing with others? And you're muted. We need you unmuted. Russell, you're muted. Lily.
Sorry about that. Yes, the journey for finding fulfillment and purpose is ongoing, and it takes a lot of work. And to be able to brainstorm with others, to share ideas with others can help you find that breakthrough. Remembering that no two retirements are the same, but getting some feedback from others can help you realize that you're not alone. And that can be a motivating factor to overcome any challenges that you may face in your journey to find fulfillment and purpose.
Thank you, Russell. So Gary, here's something people wrote, several people wrote. I did nothing but solve problems in my career and missed the problem-solving aspects of my work. Can you address that? You had a lot of problem solving in your work.
Sure, Jill. So in my manufacturing company, I employed up to 40 people and was always putting out fires. Employees, customer relations, suppliers, inventory, financial management, these were issues to be addressed daily. And then I owned my real estate business, most of the time with no employees, and I was constantly making decisions. As much as I want to downsize and scale down now, I do not want to leave my real estate career. I'm still involved and will continue to do so part-time. I cannot give up something that I have owned and loved for 50 years. So the problem solving does not have to end. To those who have worked for an employer and have established themselves in a career, you don't have to necessarily quit altogether. Try to keep up in your field with consulting or working part-time.
Thank you, Gary. So Linda, a lot of people have asked about moving. They started last week and this week. What you moved and successfully to a new community and made connections. Can you tell us about that?
This is the second time in our lives that my husband and I made a major relocation. And one of the things that we realized when we first moved to Minneapolis was that we were going to have to take a lot more initiative to meet people, because most people are living their lives. And while they might be someone who would enjoy getting to know you, it's not a high priority for most people to go out and just find other friends. And so if you're the new person, you have to take a lot more initiative. And so when we made this move, we decided that we would get very actively involved. We're both part of national organizations, fraternities, sororities, and civic organizations that had chapters in Charlotte. So the first thing we did was affiliate with those, which gave us a base of people that we would meet with regularly. We joined a genealogy, an African-American genealogy group that was based here in Charlotte, and that gave us a whole different circle of people. And we began attending cultural events that were taking place in town where we could meet people with similar interests. So for example, there's a museum here that hosts a monthly jazz event in their at their location. And it's a very low cost thing, and lots of people attend. And we met a number of people through those that were interested in jazz, which is another hobby. It's certainly a hobby of my husband's, and he's since branched off from that and started a jazz appreciation group, which now has about 30 members. And so we just, if we would meet someone that we liked, we would take the initiative and call to follow up to see if they wanted to have lunch or dinner or coffee or something like that, to be very intentional about trying to meet people who were like-minded and who could potentially be friends of ours. And today we have a really large circle of friends. Most of the people that we know are like us, transplants to Charlotte, similar age group, but we have just different circles based on different interests that we have. And I think that for some people, it's very hard to take that initiative. But if you don't, and you don't do something, you know, there's a lot going on here. It's one of the reasons we chose Charlotte. We didn't want to live in a retirement community. We didn't want to live in a resort. We wanted to be in a city where there were lots of things that we thought we could enjoy. And we made it a real practice to get out and do things to meet people. And I think that's something that a lot of folks are kind of rusty at in terms of their skill set, particularly if you're used to meeting most of your friends through work or through your children's activities, which tend to be two very easy ways to connect with people. And if I was going to advise someone pre-retirement, I would suggest that they find some sort of interest that they have that's not related to either family or work, and just step out there and try to get involved in something that isn't connected to those two things, where you can meet people. And it's a skill that I think you just have to develop through practice.
Perfect. Thanks, Linda. So Barry, I'm going to read you a question. People are wanting to address your particular situation. They already asked about it. They're concerned that, and they asked for advice for those who are nearing retirement and also in the sandwich stage between college students and elderly parents. Do you have any advice you want to give? And, how do you think about yourself versus now you're focusing on everyone else's needs?
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Jill. I have a couple of thoughts. First of all, one thing I've learned is that we're all unique in our priorities and our view of our family obligations. And I mean, this is really something that each of you has to think about for yourself. I mean, we have the extreme in our family of my wife and I who were willing to spend most of our time helping the elderly and our children as they need it. And I have other relatives who, barely remember their mother's phone number. So unfortunately, you have to decide how much of your life it's a trade-off, right? And how important family is to you, how much of a trade-off you're willing to make between your own purpose, your own goals, your own hobbies versus, finding enjoyment in helping others and helping them achieve their goals. It's a personal thing. And I'm not maybe I characterized it a little negatively. I mean, everyone has to do what makes sense for their situation and their skills and one thing I found being, on the end of my wife and I have probably more actively participating in our family's lives and helping them more is figuring out how the family as a group, how to get them the help, not just from ourselves, but from the broader world, it takes a village. Even if some family members aren't as actively involved, how and when can they get involved? What skills do they have, or time can they commit to help with different things so they still feel somewhat a part of things? And to, hire professionals where it makes sense so that we can have some life and sort of trade off money for time. And, we only have so much time left ourselves. So we're more willing now, I think, than ever before to spend money to help our family than do it ourselves. But we do both. So that's a big part of it.
Thank you. So Denise, here's a common concern. It came up in a variety of questions. What if your retired partner is set on doing things that don't interest you? Then what?
I retired a number of years after my husband, and he had already established his own routines and activities. So as I began retirement, I went about developing my own fitness and social activities that ran adjacent with his. We have discussed and agreed to things that we like to do together, things that we're willing to do together, and then we also have our alone time. For example, I've gone to NASCAR and Indy races with him, even though they aren't my cup of tea, and he's gone to see Broadway plays and museums with me. It's a give and take, but we've figured out how to make it work.
Great, thank you, Denise. So now we're at the point where Liliana, if you could help me, if you're there, where we can either take chats that came in today, some questions, or I have more questions from last week that I can just start asking the panelists. Did you see any pattern that you want to ask?
Well, a couple of questions came up, Jill, and one specifically, what if a spouse is at a very different stage of life, that is working intensely in a fast-paced career, but other is retired and seeking purpose?
Well, I'll just say one thing about the literature. It says that with couples, and you can see some of this research on my website, and you can see our panelists are a little skewed here to couples that got together early and stayed together. That, if we had it to redo, I probably would pick some different variety that way too, because many people are not coupled at this age. So anyway, back to that question of spouse retiring. The literature says with a couple, it can be very difficult in the beginning when they retire. And another point I can tell you the issues. If they get through it, it's great to be with a partner when you're retired. And the most difficult situation is when the woman continues to work and the man doesn't. Remember, I brought up some issues last week about social connections and how in a heterosexual relationship, a man will rely on the woman. Well, here she's working and then coming home and he's expecting the help with the social connections. So if any of you can address that, that would be great when you're at different stages.
Well, I think again there has to be some type of compromise there, and through communication, and it's something that you have to work through. There's no pat answer that you can give. I think it's again a journey that you need to discuss and
well, you know,
find
Russell, do you, if this isn't too personal, could you give an example from that journey, maybe of a success or a bump that had to be worked out? And if you want time to think about it, you can, or maybe looks like Linda has something to say. Is that okay, Russell?
Yep.
Although we're kind of the same life state, my husband and I are exactly the same age. So, but he did retire about 5 years before I did. And one of the ways that we addressed having that very different time period is that he had developed a number of interests that he could work on. He was very active in our church, for example, and was the chair of the trustee board, which took up an awful lot of time, and kind of helped balance that workload, and also gave him opportunities to meet and engage other people. And he also got involved in several other volunteer activities that were pretty intensive. And so that allowed us to have a good balance. But I think that very early in our relationship, well, much earlier than retirement, when my husband and I have one son, and when our son was young, he did everything with our son. He was a coach, he was the Boy Scout leader, he was very involved in his activities. But as our son got older, I began to look at what he was doing and thinking that when our son got to a point where, one, he might not want to do everything with his dad, or two, when he finally went away to school, that would be a problem. And so I started really encouraging my husband to get involved in more activities of his own that didn't involve our son specifically. So he joined he joined a band at our church. It was an orchestra the church started, and he got involved in that. He started getting more involved in church leadership and other things, so that by the time we got to the point where our son left home, he did have a robust series of things that he had as his own interests. And I think that's something you need to anticipate, as opposed, it's much harder to do when you have never done it and then you're just starting out. And so those were some things that we did earlier in life that allowed us to weather that transition when I was working and he was retired.
Well, thank you, Linda and Russell. What you're really illustrating the points of good communication, need to talk to each other, have to have resilience, think proactively. And Linda, the thing you brought up from before is to think about your transition and implement something before. It doesn't have to be the right something, but get in the process. Your son might at some point is not going to be relying on your husband that way. What can he be doing so to further his interests out in the world? Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to address this?
Yeah.
Hey, Barry, and then Liliana, maybe you'll have another question. We still have time.
Yeah, a few comments on the topic. First of all, I think, a lot of it's just your mindset and your viewpoint going into it. As I explained before, I mean, my wife sacrificed a lot of opportunities in her career, really in favor of my career. And I looked at it like, now it's time for me to reciprocate for her and do whatever she needs so that she could feel satisfied that her education was put to some good use and that she feels good about her career. And so I expected to work well into our retirement. She has no plans to retire anytime soon, and many of her colleagues work until a ripe old age in her field. So I'm okay with that. We're also both fairly independent people. If anything, ever since COVID started and retiring, we spend more time together than we ever did before. So the fact that she's working is really not a problem for me. Actually, I further comment, I thought it was interesting what you said, Linda, about, about getting your husband to have activities independent of your kids. I agree with that, but I also have an opposite approach to that, which is that now not spending 12, 13 hours a day away from the house, I would love to have more time to spend with my kids. One of them moved to Boston. I'm in New York City. So I go out of my way to find ways to reconnect with my kids. I mean, one's living with us, so that's not a problem. But the other one's in Boston. He got a job last year with Major League Baseball. He's involved with the new pitch clock rules where they time the pitchers and whatnot. He had to go for spring training in Florida last winter. And my wife's working. My son called me up. Would you like to come with me and see me in action at my new job and spend a week with me in Florida and stay in the hotel and go out to dinners with me? And I said, I got nothing stopping me. Your mom's working. I'm retired. Why not? And I just hopped in a plane and spent a week with him. It was fantastic. And yes, it was a continuation of our childhood of going to see him play baseball and whatnot, but it was a whole new way of expressing our relationship as an adult and traveling together as adults and in more of a working context. It was fantastic. So something I really enjoyed. And my wife was fine with it. I think she was a little jealous because she wanted to go too, but we both realize we're in a different stage of our career and our lives, and it's okay if we do things separate as well as together.
Wow, thank you both for illustrating the same question and divergent ways of approaching it. So I'm going to go on to the next question, unless any of you want to add something. Liliana, what do you have for us?
One thing that came up was life is seldom 100% positive or negative bag. However, most of your panels sound like each of one is living their ideal best lives ever. But it makes those of us leading more realistic retirements like relative failures. That said, I say that with a tinge of humor, although it would have been helpful to hear any of their challenges or disappointments.
Wow, great.
Well, I will tell you, I'm sorry, that
We'll
as
start with
health is an issue. And, both my husband and I have had, different types of health challenges that we have been working through. And I think we're in our early 70s, and it seems like everybody we know is having an operation every other week. And we've had our own issues with that. And I think that that is something that you have to work through. Fortunately, none of ours have been life-threatening, but they certainly, right now, for example, tomorrow I have an appointment to see about a knee replacement. And that is a very common thing among the people that we are friends with and are engaging with at this stage of our life. And we just have to figure out, how do we get through these various health challenges to continue to try to live a life that is satisfying to us. And so I will say that for us has been probably in terms of issues that are problematic, I think that some of the health things have been more challenging. So,
Russell.
Yeah, sorry if I gave the impression that retirement was all giggles and grins, because it's not. It's a challenge. And to maintain a positive attitude, to be positive, it's work. It's something that you have to strive for each and every day. But there are going to be peaks and valleys during retirements. And again, reason why you may want to talk to someone on the STAR team is because you can find out that they're going through maybe similar issues that you're going through, and that can help you. But yeah, there are challenges in retirement, but I think you have to make a concerted effort to be positive, and you have to work at it.
Denise, and you're muted.
Yeah, I was going to take it off. So with respect to the challenges, I mean, as Linda had stated, we've had some health issues that we've had to deal with. And when these things have emerged, we had to kind of adjust to a new normal. We had to change our goals and our expectations. Maybe the adjustment might be temporary, like when my husband was recovering from his knee replacement surgery, or it could be something more permanent. But if you make adjustments to your goals so that they're still realistic, that's a big part, I think, of staying fulfilled, and it'll help you progress through the difficult times.
Does anyone else have something you want to add? Otherwise, I'll add some. So, Gary, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, Jill. To Russell's point about maintaining a positive attitude, and it does take work, but I can give you a couple of examples just from family members. My mother was a breast cancer survivor, and when she was in her 70s, and she had a double mastectomy. And she survived cancer and lived to be 92. In her 80s, she had a double knee replacement when her doctors told her, you can't do two at one time because you're not going to be able to walk and it's going to be a huge recovery. And she said, well, I don't have time for this. I'm going to go back to playing golf, and I'm going to do all of my activities, and I'm going to beat it. And she did. But so she had a positive attitude about everything in her life. My dad, on the other hand, had 2 hip replacements, not consecutively, but he didn't have a positive attitude. And after his hip replacements, when he was in his 80s, he moped around with a walker. They lived in an assisted living facility. And so he saw people periodically, but he was not the same person ever again because he didn't have that attitude. And yes, it takes a lot to have a positive attitude, but you've got to think about, I guess, what stage you're going into in your life. If you want to retire, you have to have a plan. And what is that plan? You don't just wake up and say, okay, I'm not going to work today. What am I going to do? Because I've seen people who take that approach, people at the gym. They hang around the gym and they're talking to people, but they have nothing else to do the rest of the day. So they just stay there. But you have to have structure. You have a lot of free time and you can make it work, but you've got to stay positive and think about your future. And maybe, as Barry said, about having short-term goals, not necessarily the long-term goals that you have, when you're working.
Denise?
Yeah, I just wanted to address that sometimes people find themselves retired because they were, forced out, and they may not have had the opportunity to develop a plan. And I think it's good, if that happens to you, to just spend a little time reflecting upon, your new situation and what is it that you really want to do going forward. And I would advocate that you try to add things incrementally. It's, you rather than taking on doing 50 different things all at once, it's good to think about and plan out the things that you want to add so that you've got balance and you can achieve an overall satisfaction rather than being overloaded. But sometimes there isn't the opportunity to have a plan ahead of time, and you have to just think about it a little bit.
And that question was very astute, and thank you for asking that, because it's true. We picked panelists that had gotten through challenges so that they could illustrate how to get through. And you're saying, hey, we're part of the regular people here, help us. So I just want to tell you for something about me personally. And Denise, what you just said, for those of you that get forced into retirement, unfortunately, that's the worst predictor of doing well in retirement for some of the reasons Denise said. So if you could give yourself a break, if you didn't choose it and have the time to plan well, it's going to be harder. And as you heard panelists say, social connection, and you can do it with BU, really can help you figure things out, how to stay connected, not just do this on your own. It's too hard. The other thing I wanted to say is Linda brought up, and I had the same experience of, I was really enjoying retirement. Well, kind of. And then it was, for me, about 2 years in, I realized I'm missing something. It's not really working for me. Even though I'm doing all these things, this feeling of missing was hard. It took me a lot of searching to figure out what to do. And I'll tell you what I landed on is I'm a researcher. So I thought, okay, how do other people deal with this stage of life? So I spent the next year reading, and then I used my skills to start doing focus groups and asking people, this is what the literature says. Is it true? Then I start interviewing people. Then because of that, it starts becoming articles. It starts becoming research, presentations. But I definitely had a period of funky, because I have the kind of mind where I need to know what next in terms of some intellectual pursuit. I was taking classes at the university, and it's great. At this age, I take them. I don't do the tests. I can learn what I want. I can pick the best teachers because it's for me at the university. So I get all the benefit, but it wasn't as fulfilling. And I need to know what next year I can feel a little adrift as I deal with, I'm 73, and I feel like everyone in my life, we're kind of having health issues one at a time. It's your this week, that week. So we support each other a lot. And I will tell you another thing. I waited my whole life to get a dog, and I yearned for a dog. And the literature and the COVID literature said animals really make a difference. I knew I yearned for a dog, but anyway, I don't know if you could have a dog or a cat in your life, but the literature clearly says it helps you get out. It helps you meet people. It gives you someone to talk to at home, especially if you're living alone. They're just, anyway, that's a benefit that I will revise my literature, because I reviewed that literature, and it's also important, something you can more control yourself. So let's see, we have, we're just about out of time. So Liliana, I think maybe you have ending things you want to say, and I'm grateful to you, panel. Just like that, you gave really useful information, you're articulate. And back to Liliana, remember, I will send out an email afterwards. Liliana, is in the email, we created a little survey. We need your help figuring out our what next in this engagement. You could do a service to BU and yourself by filling out, it's just 2-minute survey that our panel created. So Liliana, your turn to end. Anything you want to say?
First of all, thank you everybody for putting your comments into the chat. We didn't get to all the questions, but we certainly will make sure to follow up and include some of the answers. So Jill will follow up with an email to everyone about the questions that we didn't get answered. So thank you again. Jill, Russell, Gary, Linda, Barry, and Denise, thank you so much for participating in today's webinar and panel. I truly appreciate you sharing your experiences and insights about how you found purpose in retirement, and then also sharing a little bit about the challenges and how you went and got through them. So on behalf of the BU Alumni Association, thank you. I also want to thank all of you who are joining us and give a special thanks to those who contribute and support BU students and the university through your donations. Keep an eye out on the alumni event calendar about news of upcoming events and resources. In the meantime, you can continue to engage with other Terriers on the BU Connect Star Network. You will find a link in the email that we will send you. Thank you again for your time. Everybody have a great day and be well.
Thank you.
Be you. Terriers rule. See ya.